Okay, I was out walking around and thinking about how I was going to eventually drive the input shaft of this mill, and it dawned on me that technically speaking, since this is no longer going to be a line shaft operated machine, I don't actually need this big line shaft pulley, flat belt pulley. So, in the process of taking this off to kind of examine the shaft to see what kind of what size pulley I would need, etc., etc., come to find out that this is 1.5 inches in diameter. But moreover, I kind of got really excited about how this clutch mechanism operates, for one, and for two, how the bushing inside of this thing lubricates itself. So I'll start out with this bearing. Right there is the oiling, or the oil reservoir for this big brass bearing surface, or bronze, or whatever it is. So I expected to see a hole drilled through the brass bearing as well, but instead it actually looks like there's a little bit of a gap between the cast iron housing of this thing and the brass bearing. After looking at it a little bit more closely, there appears to be about a few oddball discolored rings in here. Now, let me see if I can get a little flashlight in there to help out a little bit, but yeah, you can see the discoloration. I spent a little bit of time. I just assumed that at first that it was dried up grease that had, just congealed in there. So I started picking some of it out, but it actually looks fibrous, as if it's wood. It looks like wood. So after about 10 minutes of picking at this, I stopped and realized that it's probably supposed to be there, especially since this is still marked with the number 10 that most everything else on this machine is marked with. So I think that is some sort of wooden wick type material. There's an oil reservoir pretty much around the entire circumference of this thing. And I think it just slowly wicks through those, whatever type of wooden material that is, unless it was at one point some sort of cloth material and it's just, I don't know, fossilized, for lack of a better word. But I thought that in itself is quite a fascinating feature. It's amazing some of the old technology that's employed on some of these machines. That just absolutely fascinates me half to death. So anyways, I think that's enough on that bearing. The clutch mechanism, if I can let's see here. Well, let me get a little bit of light first. You're not going to really be able to see it terribly well, or at least not be able to see it actuate very well. So I'll kind of try and explain it to you as best as I can. Alright, I think right there you can kind of see the cone-shaped thing. That cone-shaped thing right there. That is what actuates the clutch on this thing. I'm going to try and use my knee and actuate the lever real quick so that you can see it kind of move a little bit. There it goes. Okay, so when that cone moves outward or moves towards the rear of the machine, let's see, where's the lever at? Anyways, right there is a lever with that spring attached to it. That lever is riding on that cone. And as the cone moves out, this lever moves towards the outer diameter of this thing and basically acts as a brake drum cam right here. So this whole assembly right here expands just like a brake drum, or a brake shoe inside of a brake drum. So let me see if I can do it with my foot here. All right, here goes nothing. I guess you can't really see much, but anyways, I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. To me, it's a rather fascinating assembly. Kind of, it's in some ways it's like the clutch was on the Hindi. In some ways it's not. It's its own unique thing, but the principles are fairly similar. They both have drum and shoe type operation. They're both just metal on metal, whether it be cast iron, steel, or whatever. I'm assuming cast iron. And I'm absolutely fascinated by how the functionality of this thing. So obviously, as you can imagine, this outer drum is rotating, and then when the clutch is engaged, this starts to rotate with it and drives this shaft that goes into the main gearbox of this machine. So anyways, the whole reason I was even looking at this in the first place is to put a pulley on this down to the motor that's going to mount down there somewhere, not quite that low, and remove all of this assembly. Obviously not get rid of it, but keep it and preserve it for whoever winds up with this machine after I'm dead and gone. But just to simplify getting this thing to the RPM range that I would like it to be at. So after doing a little bit more thinking and researching, I seem to spend a great deal of time with this Bridgeport head running at about 1,000 RPM. So if I can get this Cochrane Bly to 1,000 or 1,200 RPM or so, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with that. So anyways, I think I'm going to stop the video there. I'm going to slap this thing back together and lube it up real good. I just thought there might be a few people that get a kick out of how this clutch mechanism operates.